Okay, so this is the graphic quotation, putting a graphic quotation over top of a photo tutorial. So here's a drone shot I got of a sunset, and I thought, well, okay, what kind of quotation am I going to put over this? From a creative end, I just went on to Google and was really original and said sunset quotes. And here's kind of a cool one: watch more sunsets than Netflix. Just to review, this is in standard screen mode. You can hit the F key to go into full screen mode, or if you press and hold down here, you can toggle through the screen modes here in Photoshop. And I like this screen mode with menu bar because I can be on any tool, hit the space bar, it takes me to the hand tool, and I can move the image around. There's just a lot more flexibility being in that. Okay, I'm going to make a duplicate layer here, go down here into the adjustment layers, just punch some of the colors up just to get kind of a look that I like a bit more. Move that off to the side with the hand. All right, so I have my adjustments the way that I want. I've thrown on a selective color just to punch up some of the dark areas, add like a little bit more saturation with some selected colors. Punched up the saturation a little bit. You can see between those two, punches things up a bit. I threw on a photo filter with a violet, and then the levels. Select all those, right click, and then merge layers. And then you can see the before and after. Go over here, the type tool in Photoshop, select the horizontal. You could try the vertical. I would avoid any of the masking tools for now. Horizontals, good. That didn't come up, so we just got to drag this down. Forgot the F there. And then here's your move tool. You can move your text around wherever you want over top of the image. Now you can pick the font size here. You can decrease it or increase it to where you like. A couple other features. You can change the font style like you can in most programs, and then select a font style that you like. I like the font again. Go up here, and then you can start picking a color that you want. Under window and character, you can change the spacing between letters and whatnot, or change the proportions of the letters. Right here, you can see this distancing here. You can play around. Let's see what happens there. And that changes the spacing in between the letters. If you want to spread them further apart or move them closer together, you can do that in here. This stretches it. So if we go at 200, just to show you, it starts stretching it on the vertical axis. And this stretches it on the horizontal. I don't really like stretching things too much. And another tip for creative options when dealing with your text is that if you're on the text tool, you've selected it. Up here, there's this text tool with an arc under it. It allows you to warp the text, and you can pick different warping options. So you can just go down here, pick arc, for instance, and then you can adjust this slider here to try different warp settings with the slider. I just went to the first option here, arc, but as you see, there's a ton that you can just play around with. You can select fish, for instance, and it gives you this other warpy kind of thing. So if you want to get a little more creative with what you have going on with your font, you can go down here into the layer styles or the FX button. You can look at putting a stroke on, but this font is pretty thin. So if we want, even if we want a stroke size of 1, so that's where you change the size. Stroke's kind of meaningless, so let's take the stroke off of that, but that's where, if you want to put stroke on a text, you do that. People like to put on drop shadows. That's also available in here, so you can throw a drop shadow. You can change the angle and play around with the opacity and the size and all that. So if you want to explore and be a little more creative, and maybe it's going to work out, maybe it won't, you can explore some filters. I'm going to show you a couple of the more popular techniques if you're trying out that. I like fonts just being plain, but I mean, that's just me. So you can try different things. But anyways, a couple of popular things that students have done in the past have been, you can go check out the stylize and maybe emboss your text. Now this warning will come up to rasterize or convert it to the smart object. So just hit convert to the smart object, and there you go. You've got your embossing preview on off. So maybe you like that. So you can go OK, and there's your embossed text. Another popular filter to throw on text sometimes is to go to Filter, Stylize, play around with adding wind. Students would like that. Now hit OK, and there you go. You have a wind effect on the text if you want. Okay, a couple other things that students have used effectively in the past under the filter and distort area is the zigzag and ripple. So I'm just going to click on zigzag and show you that. And you've got like a little zigzag. You can play around with the sliders if you want. Distort and then ripple. And then we can change the amount and whatever. I'm just going to do the default here and just show you. So you can have all sorts of fun trying out different filters. The one that I think is the most effective is using a blur on text. So what I would do is I would go here to my text, I'd go up to the filter and into the blur area, and the combination of the Gaussian blur or the motion blur sometimes adds something kind of cool. So if I went to motion blur, here it is. You can change the angle of the motion. I think the horizontal, when you adjust it at a horizontal angle of 0, and then you throw that out, looks pretty effective when you combine it with just the straight text. So I would throw a angle of 0 horizontal motion blur on the text a little bit if you want. Go OK. Then go to the straight text and either put that at the bottom or move it at the top. And then you can have like a little bit of a motion to your text. It works well if it's a race car or cycling or something. So if you do put a motion blur on something like this, don't forget you can go to the opacity and lower the opacity, make it like a little more subtle. Doesn't need to be at like 100%. You can also try different blending modes to see what happens there. If you're adding multiple texts and multiple effects to something, like stacking things like I've showed you, a way to stay organized in Photoshop, so create a new group, and then you can take all your text layers here, and then you can move them here into the group, and then collapse the group. If you want to move all the contents in the group around, you start, say, doing this, then all of a sudden it starts pulling the one group member away, right? So what you need to do in Photoshop is open up the groups, select all the layers that you want, and then you hit this link button and you link the layers together, collapse the group, and then you can then move around the linked layers together inside of the group. Probably scale them. If you go Command T, then you can scale them all together, rotate them all together. So if you have multiple effects that you want to link together, you just link those layers, throw them in a group, and you stay pretty organized. And there you have it. You've added a graphic quotation onto a photo.